Fantastic. So welcome everyone to AuthorConnect Chat. I'm your host, Tony. I'm also the president of BookPal, where we believe in the power of books to ignite continuous learning and growth. Our guest today is David Marquet. He's a former submarine captain, as well as author of the best-selling book, Turn the Ship Around, a fantastic book about creating leadership at every level within your organization. I'm really excited to welcome David as our guest today because we've had this extended 6-year relationship with his team, and we've really seen the power of his books to help transform not only our client organizations, but the way that people conduct business throughout the whole world. In fact, we loved his book so much back in 2013, we sponsored it at an event here locally in Orange County, and I handed out 600 copies to fellow business leaders throughout the LA Orange County market, which was exciting way to share the power of his book with the greater Orange County community. In addition to being a best-selling author, David is a well-respected speaker and consultant and works with businesses all over the world to transform their organizations. What I'm really excited about is Tuesday of this week, David released his follow-on work, Leadership is Language, the hidden power of what you say and what you don't. So congratulations, David, on that fantastic book. There it is. This exciting book builds on a lot of the teachings of Turn the Ship Around and focuses on the impact of language at work. It's a thoughtful dive, so when you see it, it's actually a very substantial book with a lot of really solid content. It is not a fluff piece by any stretch, so I'm sure David will speak to the length of work and love that he put into it because it is absolutely a tremendous book. Today we'll be kind of going through a little presentation from David on a lot of these great teachings from Leadership as Language, and then we'll be following up with a little Q&A section at the end. So if you happen to jump off early, you'll be able to watch that recording next week. And as well at the end, we'll be selecting 3 lucky winners to receive signed copies. So stick around for that, and we'll be announcing those right at the end of the webinar. So without that, thank you, David, and you can get started.
Thank you, Tony. And yeah, I remember that event 6 years ago in Orange County, and you guys showed up with all those books, and it was awesome. So welcome, everybody. And what I was hoping to do today was dive a little bit into the behind the scenes on the book and what some of the structural thinking was that I was grappling with as I went through the book, and how I kind of see it fit in the organizational and leadership design construct of the modern era. So I want to start with this. I had this amazing experience as a submarine commander where we basically flipped the leadership paradigm on its head. And so instead of me leaning into the team leaned into me. Instead of me directing and then reporting, the team would state their intentions. Then it activated this amazing groundswell of thinking, passion, energy, ownership, responsibility, which won not only in the short run, but over the next 10 years when submarine created more submarine commanders than anyone had ever seen. 10 submarine commanders from the one wardroom. And the story, it was a story with some grit of how we actually did it. But there were a lot of things unsaid, like how we actually set up the operating rhythm at work. And the operating rhythm at work tended to oscillate between thinking and doing, between the broad expansion of broad perspective decision-making and then the narrow focus of getting something done. My problem was when you set about an empowerment program, you want to avoid the, hey, everyone can do anything approach, because that's obviously not what you want. What I wanted was broad perspective in things like deciding, is it safe to start the reactor? Should we start the reactor? What team are we going to use to start the reactor? But once we made the decision and the commitment to start the reactor, I wanted super precise focus on, here's the procedure, A, B, C, D, E, and I'm not going to do it A, B, D, C, E. It's going to be in precise, focused order. So I needed people to be at one point, broad perspective, embracing, scanning left and right, embracing variability, and then flip to a mindset of focused, reducing variability and eliminating, basically narrowing your perspective. Focus means narrowing the perspective and eliminating outside distractions. And this was this rhythm that we had at work. So that's what I'm trying to get at with this new book. And the way I think about it is a couple ways. Since I'm an engineer and a physics major, I think about re-engineering the language. The hypothesis behind the book is that the words we use, the words that sound normal to us. Let's be a can-do organization. A software company has an all-hands meeting. Why do those things sound normal? It's because those are the words and phrases we grew up with, and which were the words and phrases our parents and bosses grew up with, which is the words and phrases their parents and bosses grew up with. So those words and phrases are, by necessity, industrial age words and phrases. Why do we have so many more organizations saying they want to be a can-do organization than want to be a can-think? Well, that sounds kind of weird. It doesn't really, it's not a natural thing to say. So our natural language anchors us back into this industrial age structure. So what we tried to do in the book operates at 3 levels. At the highest level, it sets out this pattern between thinking and doing. And the structural change that we're seeing at work is this. In the old days, we divided thinking and doing by class. So we had leaders and followers, management and workers, salary worker, hourly worker, college educated, high school educated, management and union, but white collar, blue collar. But we had these symbols and cultural rituals to embed this difference in class. And this was the thinking and deciding class, and this was the doing class. And so if you looked at their lives, these guys always did thinking, and these guys always did doing. And the biggest change we think is happening now in work is that the doing work is going away because algorithms and AIs and robots and bots are eating away at that. And it's being more and more automated. The best teams and the best companies let the doers be the deciders. So instead of saying these people do the thinking work and these people do the doing work, everyone is going to be doing the work. And then occasionally everyone's going to raise their head and shift to thinking. Everyone, not just the anointed ones at the top. So that we're going to let the doers, people doing the work, decide about the work. Now, in order to do this, we have to re-script our language. And what I think we've been able to do with the book is lower the water level enough so that the underlying patterns are revealed. And the way I think about it is we are programmed to react in certain ways. And I started thinking about these as plays. So in other words, if someone comes up to you and says, let's say you have a product launch scheduled in 2 weeks. There's a lot of momentum behind it. We've been working hard. The CEO's been talking about it. Competitor, oh, by the way, kind of beat us to the punch in this area. So there's all this sort of momentum about making it happen. And someone comes up to you and says, hey, I don't think we should launch on time. Well, what the typical reaction is, really, we've been going over this. Look, it's very important. And in either subtle or not subtle ways, we react, respond, reply. And this is a program play. What we don't typically see is curiosity about what do you see that we're not seeing? What do you know that we're not knowledgeable of? And so we need to reprogram these plays. So at the highest level, it's this concept between the 2 kinds of work, which I label red work and blue work. Blue work is the creative thinking, decision-making work, and red work is the actual doing work. At the next level down, there are these 6 plays. And I can show you a quick high-tech graphic. The 6 plays of the industrial age. And the key is obey the clock. That's why we have words like clockwork. But obeying the clock puts pressure on people to keep them in the doing performance work, which is okay. But once we want people to think and make decisions, then we need to control the clock, not just obey the clock, because we can't do our best thinking if we're under the pressure of the clock. So we have to re-script all these plays. And so the book goes through, hey, here's what it used to be, here's what you want. And then the magic of the book, in my opinion, is asking the question, what would it sound like if? Wisley, we paraphrase this as Wisley. What would it sound like if? And so we'd always say, what would it sound like if people were more collaborative? What does it sound like when we're coercing people? What does it sound like when we're collaborating with people? What does it sound like when we're complying with a direction from on top? What does it sound like when we're committing to do something? And so we parse these differences, and we actually have words to say. And the magic of having words to say is, since you can hear them, you can measure them. So you don't say be more empowered. Why don't you just say, here's what you plan on doing, here's what you intend to do, here's what you've done. Like, just change the words. That allows me to measure empowerment. But the cool thing is about words is when we practice them, then we actually feel it. So the words allow us to practice, and the phrase we use is we act our way to new thinking. We act by practicing the words, we act our way to new thinking. And in organizations around the planet that I've seen, the problem isn't people saying, oh, I want to run it like an industrial age assembly line. Everywhere I go, people are saying, I want to create an environment where people can feel more passionate about their work, we can activate people's thinking. But then we have these languages that anchor people in the past. And I'll give you an example. You have to let's go back to our example of the company with the software release. Let's say now you have a meeting. You're going to get together and you're going to say, final meeting, should we release the software? I guarantee you, if I went to 99 companies out of 100, here's what would happen. They would discuss it, and then the CEO would call for a vote. Okay, what does everyone think? And the vote's going to be binary like this. And it's very culturally difficult to say, no, I don't think so. Because what happens during the discussion is we anchor our thoughts on whatever the first person or loudest people or the most dominant people say, and that's narrowing narrowing variability. It's reducing variability. It's making it harder for outliers to speak. Now, psychologists have known for decades the impact of anchoring and groupthink on making it difficult for the people who are the diverse and dissenting thinkers to speak up. But yet we still run meetings this way, knowing it's not the right way. What do you want to do? What you want to do is vote first using probabilities. We use either hand. How strongly do we feel about the software release? 5 if you're all in, 0 if you're like no way, or some number of fingers in between. You can do that. You can do cards. You can do electronically. Then what you do is you look for the people who have the 5s and the 0s, and you invite them to speak. And you always start with the minority. So if you have 6 5s and 2 0s, and the rest of the group is somewhere in between, go to the 0s first and say, hey, what are you guys seeing? And with respect, investigate what they see that the rest of you don't see. The decision then it gets made after we get all the information on the table, as opposed to what happens beforehand, is it's a fake meeting to rubber stamp a decision that allows the CEO to later say, well, you were all there, you all had a chance to speak up. It doesn't work, and it doesn't help. And then we know that decisions that are made like that from those structures, they're not bad people, they're not technically bad, but the structure, the playbooks that they're using are anchoring them in this industrial age way. And I tell several stories in the book, but the red thread story that runs throughout the book is of a ship. So here's a story. Ship leaves Florida, heads for Puerto Rico, sails into a hurricane, and sinks. Now, when did this happen? Not 1915, not 1815, 2015. This happened in 2015 with all the modern weather equipment, radios. They had TV on board the ship they were watching. They meant talk about watching Fox News, which is reporting the hurricane. And yet they sail in the hurricane, the ship sinks, all 33 people die. The amazing thing is that the government recovered the black box. So we have 26 hours, 500 pages of what they actually said, not what we wanted them to say or hoped they would say, or in some magic perfect world that we teach people to say, but what the team actually said. So most of the team here is in their 50s. The captain is in his 50s. They have one woman, female officer. She's a little bit younger. So these people are true professionals. They've been promoted in a system and rewarded for the behaviors, the exact behaviors that they're displaying on the ship. And as a mariner, I can tell you, everything that I heard from that, read in that transcript is exactly what I heard. They're words that I'd said as a submarine commander. The problem is the playbook that they used trapped them in this idea of captain as decision maker, captain as thinker, and crew as executors of the decisions made by somebody else. And that model was so rigid, so deeply ingrained that when two of the officers independently called the captain to say, "Hey, this isn't a good idea," it sounds like this. Well, Captain, I could check it again, but it's not looking good. I mean, this is a hurricane. It's the size of Rhode Island off the coast of the Bahamas. It ended up being the strongest hurricane to hit in 100 years. And this is Hurricane Joaquin back in 2015. And when you read it, it's just wrenching. It's wrenching because you know they're gonna die, and you just want them to say, "Captain, we are approaching the turn. We have an opportunity to deviate to a protected course. I intend to make this turn," or something like that. But when you go back in time, you'll see the whole structure, the words that captain has previously said. He mocks people for changing course to deviate from a storm. The whole way they think about their jobs, it's locked into this industrial age thing. And so at the end of the book, I reimagine a what if world where, let's say, the same people, same skills, same technology, same equipment, same ship, same schedule, same storm. But this time they had a different playbook. They had a playbook which allowed the doers to be the deciders and allowed the people closest to the information to step up and say what they saw, say what they thought, and say what they thought they should do. So that's why I think this book will help people. Number one, being really clear about what this difference is, the way we use our brains during the day, whether it's broad perspective work or focused work. Number two, revealing these 6 plays, what we've been programmed to do and what we really want to do. And then number 3, specific sentence starters and words. Here's another example. Start your question with the word how. Almost always going to be a better question. Too many times I hear leaders say, well, are you sure? Is it safe? Is it going to work? Well, we're talking about the future, so of course I don't know. Is it safe? I'm going to get on an airplane and fly to Houston. Is it safe? What does that mean? Well, it's pretty safe, but I could score it, probability of crashing. But who's to say whether that's safe or not safe? What does it take? How unsafe does it need to be before I go from, yeah, it's safe, no, it's not safe. So these tend to be unhelpful structures. But if you say, how safe is it? How sure are you? How likely is the assumption to become true? Now what you're going to do is you're asking a way that makes it easy for the group to give you a nuanced response. We're not going to dumb down complex work. That's what too many organizations do. We take things that are complex and we make them simplistic, and as a result, important details get buried. So why don't I just pause there? I have some other cards that come up in the questions. I'm kind of excited. I decided not to use slides, so everyone let me know what you think. I just thought this was more of a real interaction. By the way, our last play is connect. So I'm trying to live rather than conform. Conform is, oh, I'm the CEO, you're the peon, so I sit over here behind this big desk, and you sit. That's conform. That's an industrial age paradigm. So connect as humans. That's the underlying play that runs under all of this. All right, Tony.
That was fantastic. I always benefit when I listen to an author explain content in their book and I recognize myself as doing the wrong thing.
Hey, you and me both. This is really a self-help. It started as a self-help book for me because I was like, why am I saying it wrong? Why is my motivation? Why is my first impulse to say it in the unhelpful way? And I was just like,
Maybe I would love to hear the maybe epiphany or pivotal moment that occurred while you were, on that submarine, realizing that the language you were using was ineffective or actually a cause for some of the problems. I mean, it's a tremendous moment to realize that just the subtle variations in wording can have such a significant impact.
Yeah. Well, I got trained to be the submarine captain on one ship, and the very last minute, the other submarine, the worst performing ship in the fleet, their captain quit, so I got vectored over there. It was a different kind of submarine, but I was still giving orders, and it didn't work. And in the past, when I had given a bad order, when you're a leader, you give a bad order. What's the answer? Give better orders, right? No. That's not the answer. The problem is you're the one giving orders. The answer is don't give orders. Create a system where you never have to give an order because the team is leaning into you. So one of the ways to think about it is leaders think they have a gas pedal and a brake pedal. Go, 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 go. Stop. Oh, hold on. And what happens here is we've made ourselves the decision evaluator as well as the decision maker. Now, because the most senior person is going to be the decision evaluator. It doesn't really work otherwise. So the captain on the ship, the CEO, they're the last line of defense. Once you make the decision, you say, you know what, we're going to take the direct route to the Bahamas. You now have tainted yourself because psychologically, you cannot evaluate that decision dispassionately because you made it. So your emotions are wrapped up in it. So you should remove, it's a conflict of interest. You should remove, but we don't. So what you want is an organization where the team is making the decisions, because now you can dispassionately sit back and say, good, good, good. Yeah, hold on that.
Yep.
And it's this distance that results in teams that operate that way to be more resilient, agile, adaptive, and enduring than teams that don't operate that way, where we have the senior person as the be all end all, which works for a while as long as the senior person is right. But then the environment changes, the world changes, the company changes, or the senior person makes a bad judgment. You're still an individual contributor. You may be a high-priced individual contributor, but if you're just making decisions, you're not a leader. Leaders create a decision-making factory, and that's what this book is all about.
Yeah, and it's sort of, there's a lot of speak around the knowledge economy, but it's really more maybe appropriate in a lot of ways to describe it as the thinking economy, where we're taking people's mind share, not only bringing what knowledge they have, but also the ability to then make decisions on a activity by activity basis and alert when there's issues.
Yeah, so there's two things about making decisions. Well, there's at least two things, which are, we can't make decisions when we're feeling the pressure of the production as the assembly line. So as a leader, the team is going to be they're going to be chopping down trees, they're going to be running the assembly, they're going to be coding, they're going to be flying airplanes, they're going to be conducting operations in a hospital. They're going to be churn. They're going to feel good because they're doing stuff. There's action, there's activity, and I get the satisfaction from it. There's a huge cultural bias against the person saying, hold on, I think there's a problem here. The leader needs to have the guts to do that and to give the team permission to do it and a way of doing it. This is what the Andon core does in the Toyota production system, which is it allows the worker to say, hey, I got a problem in the assembly line. We need to pause the line because I got to shift out of doing into problem solving, i.e. deciding mode. Once that's done, then we can go back into this. But I can't solve the problem while the line is moving in front of me. That's too hard. So, but the second thing you can do is you can actually pre-program these pauses. So you can say, hey, let's do this for a month and then evaluate it. So here's the way I draw this. Thinking, we draw it this way. This is over time. Thinking is very broadly expansive, embracing variability. And then the red work is focused. Now I'm doing something. But if I never put an endpoint, I use the phrase an expiration date. If I never put an expiration date, then we get bad behavior because the team's like, okay, I just do this forever. I never report back. I don't talk about what I learned. And then the leader becomes the good idea fairy, which is, oh, what's going on with that project, with the website? Oh, let me see, I got some new ideas. And then you're like peppering the poor person designing the website with all these new ideas every 2 or 3 days, and they are feeling whipsawed. And it's not good for either of you. But if you say, you know what, you build a website, then let's evaluate its performance, and let's do it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks. That's the decision you got to make, is how long are you going to let that run before we say, okay, deliberate pause, put a thing on the calendar, and then we're going to talk about what did we accomplish and what did we learn.
So when you think about that in the context of maybe somebody who's in a junior operations role or a customer service role, there, to an extent, you're wanting to repeat the process of handling some shorter process of submitting an order, getting a customer's technical support question answered. How do they step out of the red work mode, raise their hand, if it's less assembly line and more, you know, the recurring process, you know, to kind of alert them this is a big enough deal to pull the cord?
Yeah, same thing. Running a process like a surgical team, flying an airplane, customer service, standing at the front desk of a hotel, checking people in. Same thing. It's the same as running an assembly line. That's focus, process. The question is, does it benefit from reducing variability or embracing variability? I would like each person, I would like every Big Mac to be the same. 2 pickles, not 3, not 1, 2. I want the variability in the medical team. We're going to administer 50 cc's of an anesthetic. I want 50. I don't want 49 one day and 51 the next day. Reducing variability. So all that kind of work is the same. It's focused, precise work. So we could, at the beginning of the project, let's say it's a new procedure. Let's say we're a hospital, new technology, new machine, new way to do open heart surgery. We might only want to do one, and then have a retrospective reflect.
Kind of check in.
Yeah. So we complete. This is one of the new places. We complete, we celebrate, and we reflect. Then we make a decision to make any adjustments, and we go on. Now, you don't want to do. It's too burdensome to do that every time you do anything. You wouldn't get enough work done. So then maybe we'll do 3. Or maybe we'll do the procedure for a week, and then maybe we'll do a procedure for a month. What happens is, as we start to dial it in, we can do longer and longer production runs, longer red work runs, but you still eventually want to always know when the next, okay, we're gonna do it for everything here is gonna have an expiration date, and if we don't assign an expiration date, it's a year. So I know that at least once a year, I'm gonna revisit all of my business practices and all of our procedures.
How might you approach the transformation process if it's a middle manager versus a senior leader that wants to implement this within the organization, and maybe what are the risks that they want to watch out for?
Yeah, so it's all about safety. It's about making it safe for you, for the people you're working with, and for who you're working for. So if you go to your boss and say, oh, I have this, I read this new book, you're doing it all wrong, let me help you. Yeah. You're gonna activate their, because what they hear is, oh, you think you're so smart, and this becomes a challenge of authority. So step 1 is to earn the right to be heard. Don't try and affect decisions yet. And then activate learning and use the phrase experiment. So I'd say, so if it were me, now I was not very good at this, so I'm giving advice that I was sort of
better coach.
I've learned the hard way. Okay. Yeah. So I would say, hey, I read this, I got some ideas about how to do things different here from this book, and I'd like to try some. So what I'm going to do, so first of all, be very transparent. So we're going to change one thing. Don't make it big, make it small. Making it small makes it safe, and and give them choice. So I got 3 ideas. We can do A, B, C. Which one do you think we should try? As much as possible, choice, choice, choice.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to do B. So we're going to change the way we run the meeting so that in decision meetings, we're going to vote first and then discuss, as opposed to discuss and then vote first. But don't say it's for all time. It's not an initiative. It's an experiment. You're going to do it. So, okay, we're going to run the next 4 operations Tuesday morning ops meetings like this. And then we're going to see how we like it. I'm going to ask you, you can tell me, and I can ask the team. But in the meantime, keep your ideas on a notepad to yourself, and don't become the good idea fairy and bother us with, I would say it that way, but yeah, but what you've done is you've given permission for people to not like the idea, but still actually commit to doing the action and to see what we learn. And we've activated the thinking. So that would be, if I were to advise my younger self when I didn't know anything but thought I knew everything, then that's one of the things I would.
What about, you know, for somebody like myself that's been playing on the industrial playbook for a long time, or at least grew up in an age where that was the standard playbook? How do you sort of think about approaching the learning process? You know, does it take time? I mean, did this transition for you sort of be an epiphany and you made this a big adjustment, or you're still learning to this day how to word things?
Yeah, so one of the things I really don't like are the binary self-affirming questions. Does that make sense? Because all you're doing is like, yes, okay, we good, you're all good to go, right? But I still find myself, I was on stage yesterday and I said one, and I was like, what am I doing? And I make a game of it now, and I tell the audience, hey, if you catch me, then yell, raise your hand and yell. But it's an issue of reprogramming yourself through the action of trying the new way. You're not going to be a better soccer player. You're not going to be a better Spanish speaker by just thinking about speaking Spanish or thinking about playing soccer. You're only going to become a better soccer player or a Spanish speaker by practicing soccer and kicking the ball or practicing the words of the language. So this is a new language, so you have to practice the words. One of the exercises we do with executive groups when designing leadership development programs is we'll say, go design a development program so your company can run any meeting in English or Polish or whatever the appropriate, some other language. And we will give them 15 minutes, and they come back and they have things like, well, we have word of the day, and we're going to start running every once. We're going to start introducing people in Spanish, and then we're going to do these little steps, and no one ever says, oh, we're going to go do an offsite and call it good, check, we got Spanish down. And then we say, okay, now do a global replace Spanish and put in leadership, because this is exactly how you want to learn leadership. Leadership, since it's a language, you have to practice it. The phrase is, we act our way to new thinking. We don't think our way to new action. And so if we don't practice, we're not going to ever do it. So you take a little thing and you practice it. And then when you feel like you kind of got about 80%, then you pick a new thing and you practice that. But just take it small steps, very small steps, almost imperceptibly small.
Yeah.
You can't be too, as long as you can detect the change, it's not too small.
When you think about, you know, let's say BookPal implementing this, obviously I can start changing the wording. You used a great example even of, you know, instead of be back in 10 minutes, let's start it. We're going to be starting at 10. It was sharing information versus.
I'm going to start at 10.
I'm going to start at 10.
Yeah, I used to do this. Okay, go on break, be back at 10. And I was telling people what to do. I was back in the industrial. It sounds so normal. So now I say, go on break. I will start at 10. Implication, you're an adult. You decide whether you want to be here at 10.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's disruptive for people to come in late, blah, blah. But if you just got a phone call and your kid's sick, don't come to my stupid session. Go take care of your family.
Does
So anyway, so back to BookPal.
well, sort of this then follow-up question of, obviously I can start to change my language, which by extension would probably start to have this flow down effect.
Yeah.
Do you recommend organizations actually kind of announce that there's a new playbook happening, or how do you sort of think about?
Yeah, I think an announcement is good to say, hey, I'm thinking about this. I'm going to try something different, because what you want to do is activate people's participation, especially about the thinking. Hey, I'm going to try this, and you guys let me know in a month what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives them permission to think it's boneheaded or it's brilliant, but it activates their senses to notice how it's different. If we just say, okay, we're going to change the business, you run your company on a whole bunch of processes: shipping books, taking order, collaborating with the authors, collaborating with your key clients, blah blah blah. So you say, okay, we're going to run the process different, and it comes from either you or the team member. What you want to say is, if it comes from you, be really careful, because you say, okay, we're going to change the process. Boom, it's going to feel like it's in concrete, that people can't resist it. So say, hey, let's run an experiment. The hypothesis is that if we change the process this way, the result will be ABC. So change the process and then see what result do we get. But I need all of you to notice whether we're actually getting the result or not. And this is one of the things that was missing on the El Faro, the ship that sailed into the hurricane, is that the decision was articulated as if it's a done deal. We're going to sail the direct route. So we're not activating people's senses of, well, I noticed that the seas are, they noticed that the seas are getting higher, the winds are blowing harder, the ship is rocking, it was hard to stay on course. This is a 790-foot long ship. They can't even keep it on course because the waves are knocking it around so much. But there's no structure for aggregating that information and then feeding it into a decision model, because they're not thinking, the playbook that they've inherited isn't thinking of the work as a series of decisions to be made. Go to here, decide, should we turn around or not? Go to here, decide whether we should go to the safe route, which is longer, or the direct route, which is shorter, but more exposed to the storm. They're not thinking about that. It's like, just get it done. Just drive to the end. Drive to San Juan, Puerto Rico. The question they had to answer is, how do we drive the ship to San Juan, Puerto Rico along this route? Not, should we drive along this route?
Similar but less deadly was the Warren Beatty example, where he didn't announce that or call out or raise any red flags that they had the wrong card in his hand for the Oscars. So, all of those things sort of have this continuum effect of risks and dangers, but they can apply it, a simple reading of a card to piloting a ship.
Yeah, so out there in LA, we had the Delta 777 took off a couple weeks ago for Shanghai, fully loaded with fuel. Calls on him, hey, I got to land back at LAX again. The pilot's looping back around. The air traffic controller is talking to the pilot and the air traffic controller says, don't you need to dump or hold fuel or anything like that? And the pilot comes back, or whoever's on the radio, I'm not sure it was the pilot, on the radio comes back and says, negative. Well, what does that mean? Negative. I don't need to dump fuel. I don't need to hold fuel. I don't need anything like that. So, and then we all know what happened. They ended up dumping fuel at the school at a low altitude.
Terrible. Yep.
So, but it all goes back to the language, and the magic is in the precise words that we use. And I hear these leaders almost proud to say, I don't want to get into details. Like, guess what? So no, that's like saying, I don't want to do my job. Your job is the details. Yep. So if you create if the organization is using the right structural words, the correct decisions will come out of the organization. So don't get into details on the decisions, get into the details of how the organization makes decisions.
When would you mind maybe restating? We have a Diana on the webinar that would love to hear the 6 plays again.
Yeah.
I think that'll be the last question. If we summarize that, we can then wrap up.
Okay, so here's the play. Here's the play. How am I doing? Holding the car. Okay. So
Yep, good view.
In the industrial age, the key of the industrial age is to obey the clock. We want picture the assembly. We just want it to run. Laverne and Shirley, right? The thing's got to just keep going.
I Love Lucy. Yeah.
If you're old enough. Yeah. So obey the clock. And because we've divided people into decision makers and doers, deciders and doers, all leadership is coercive. All leaders have to get a different group of people to decide what they decided for them to do. The word is coercion. So then we coerce them, and we say all kinds of different ways. We say words that have the impact of coercion. Then they comply with the idea of continuing the work as long as possible, with a mindset of proving that we can get it done. And then finally, we all conform to our hierarchical roles, and no one causes a mess. What you want, however, is to control the clock, because until we relieve the pressure of the stress of the clock, we can't engage our prefrontal cortex. Then true collaboration, saying, hey, I think the answer is 135, what do you guys think, is not collaboration, that's coercion. So many teams, even though they think they're collaborating, are not. They're playing the coerced play. Then from collaboration, through collaboration, we get a commitment. We commit to do something. Then we're going to think of the work in terms of these chunks that we will complete, which will allow us to do 2 things. Number 1, celebrate, which gives us a sense of progress and feeling good. And 2, reflect upon how we're doing. Now, the key is the same people who made the commitment to do that last little stretch of work are now going to reflect upon, could it be better? This requires a safe emotional, psychological construct at work. And we're going to trigger the improve play. We're going to say, what did we learn? Again, you go to any company, you say, oh, we were at quarterly objectives. The objectives are, what do? We will sell more, we will, whatever. Very few companies have, well, what are we going to, what are our learning objectives for this quarter? Even universities don't have your learning. And again, the key is this: in order to make all this happen, we have to feel human. We have to have healthy, for people to make good decisions, they have to have healthy emotions. To have healthy emotions, we need to feel human. In the industrial age, I didn't need you to make decisions, so I didn't care about your emotional state of health. So that's why industrial age designs are able to get away with basically this sort of stuffed shirt boss, ordering people around, being abusive, not listening, because we didn't really care, because you're going to sit in your chair and you're going to do your widgets, and I don't really care. But of course, this doesn't work. So it worked then, it doesn't work now. So the final play is to connect.
That's awesome. That was fantastic, David. I think everybody learned a lot today here within our room, and I'm certain on the webinar as well. So if folks are interested in your book, Leadership is Language, it came out Tuesday. We're happy to help with that. Please call into BookPal 866-522-6657. We're happy to help you with answering questions, making suggestions. We do have 3 winners for the signed copies. James Elliott, April Mills, and Sarah Dar. So we'll be reaching out via email to those folks to get them their signed copies. We'll just need their addresses. And we do have this AuthorConnect chat on a monthly basis. So definitely check out the website for upcoming chats with authors. Next month is Julie Zhao, author of Making of the Manager. So we're looking forward to that. And again, David, that was awesome. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, and I recognize at least April Mills, who I worked with way back in the dark ages. Thanks, April, and thanks for being on the show. And congratulations. Let me know what you think.
That's awesome. Take care, David.
Cheers.